series about experts in our 3 core areas of expertise, which are life care, lifestyle, and crisis. Today we have our own Cory Cart, who will be talking about travel and tourism, sharing his insights and incredible experience. So without further ado, here we have Cory Cart.
Thank you, Allison. Today we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk a little bit about multi-generational travel. We're going to cover some different aspects of it as far as the research behind it, why it's the #1 trend, the components that make up a great multi-generational travel pitch, and we're going to talk about actually pitching that to the media. So we're going to go in a lot of different directions with that. So, all right, so the timeline, I kind of talked about what we're going to do. We're going to do an overview, we're going to talk about research and all the things here. All right, so a little bit about the philosophy behind what we're doing here. The purpose of creating a great pitch for media is really making sure that you have a great narrative thread. And this narrative needs to be something that the media can act with. It needs to have an emotional tie to their end audience. It needs to have an actionable element to it. It needs to be relevant also to modern trends that are happening today. So when I look at starting a pitch, and in this case we were just given the task of family travel, we want to look at family travel as a whole, but we really want to start dissecting it. When we start dissecting it, a lot of people, you always hear them say, think outside the box, think big, think different. I'm the opposite of that. I like to think inside the box. And the reason why that is not that it's limiting, but I like to look inside the box because that's where you're going to find that authentic narrative. We cannot create a story, and what you'll see throughout this presentation, we're using New Orleans as an example. I cannot create a narrative for New Orleans. It has its own narrative. So my job as a media relations professional is to look inside the box, look inside New Orleans, further dissect that down to family travel, then multi-generational travel, and find that narrative that can be actionable, that will be relevant to the end people, the journalists that we're going to be pitching the story to. So a little bit about the process and how I do that when I'm creating a pitch. I begin by reviewing notes. I create lots of notes. I love Evernote because I use it online. I can search through it. If you see my desk, you'll see Post-its everywhere. You see me scratching on pieces of paper. I tear them apart, throw them all together in a folder. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. I just kind of dump everything into one big pile, and then I began looking at it. I began looking at statistics that I come up with through that process. From there, I start to see some common generalities. I start seeing some different things that will tie together, and you start seeing a direction. So for New Orleans, there's a lot of things that you would automatically think of. You would think French Quarter, you would think jazz, you would think culinary. So you start seeing these things. Then you start seeing how family travel will layer into that and how you can unlock a narrative that will work. Once we start kind of looking at that narrative, then I began thinking, okay, who would be interested in this? So how can we start with targeted pitches at top tier media? So the National Geographic Travelers, the New York Times, LA Times, Wall Street Journal. How can we take this narrative and make it relevant to these writers? What are they looking for? What are they covering right now? Is it tied to something that's happening in the news currently? So obviously, you know, there's a lot of the news changes rapidly, changes by the minute because of the internet and the access people have to news. So how can we jump on the bandwagon with that? Is it holiday season right now? I know we've been talking a lot about family travel from a haunted aspect. So what can you do with your family in New Orleans that would be haunted tours, cemetery tours, things of that nature, and you still have a safe experience for a large family? So that's where we start really targeting it. Then the second step that I like to take is just start spreading. Once we've given top tier journalists the opportunity to run with the story, we obviously don't want to scoop them or we're not going to get the national coverage. So once we know that those stories are going to run, then we can start looking at local and regional markets because they're going to take our story, and a lot of times we run it word for word. So that's where we can get the extra mileage out of our efforts here. So we do targeted pitches, and then we'll layer that in and start spreading the message through press releases with journalists in local and regional markets that we've had relationships with. So starting with this, I'm a little quirky when it comes to research because while I love scientific research or I like things that have been strategically conducted, you have an official study, those are great. But a lot of times I feel you can learn a lot just through observation. So in a previous professional lifetime, I worked for a company and I traveled the country doing promotional events and PR for bull ridings and rodeo events. And so Birmingham, Nashville, Reno, Boston, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Fort Worth, these were all markets. I would go in 2 or 3 weeks before the event. I would coordinate promotional events, giveaways on local media, and then it was my responsibility to also host the media and have, a press room at the event. The first event, I'll never forget that I did, my manager was so upset with me because he's like, you're not in here and you're not watching the event. I don't feel I'm going to learn anything from watching the event. He's like, where have you been the whole time? I'm like, in the parking lot. And he's like, in the parking lot doesn't make sense. I was in the parking lot looking at license plate tags. I was looking at watching the people come up. Were they coming as husband, wife, parents? Was it grandparents with their grandchildren? Was it, a couple of guys coming, out for the night because they wanted something a little bit more extreme, such as bull riding or their typical night out? Those observations are how we began making decisions on how to direct our promotional activities, where to have those. A lot of people thought it would be young men, probably 35 and under, coming to extreme bull riding. It was a PBR event, but it wasn't. It was the grandparents with their grandchildren. And as I began engaging with them, asking them questions, what we learned was Western movies are not as prevalent in society today. People are more and more generations removed from the family farm and rodeo lifestyle. The grandparents still get it. They still remember watching John Wayne. They still remember those things. So the grandchildren, they're not exposed to it. They have no interest. They have no tie. There's nothing on the TV that, is going to draw them to anything that would have to do with bull riding or rodeos. So what I found was we needed to start promoting to an older audience, take everything off of the radio stations that were the, rock stations, all that, go to a completely different market. And we started seeing ticket numbers increase because we were targeting grandparents who could bring their grandchildren and expose them to a history that they remembered, something that happened to their grandparents as children. So what did I do? I started asking friends about New Orleans. Of course, one of the first 3 things that come to mind is that mention New Orleans. French Quarter, food, and jazz were the 3 things, as well as flooding and crime. Those are the other 2 things. So how do you get around that? So I would ask, have you ever taken your family to New Orleans? No. Why would I take my family to New Orleans? What would I do with my children? And so that became the next obstacle. Well, there actually are a lot of family-friendly things to do in New Orleans. Things that are year-round, things that are seasonal. So as we're looking at multi-generational travel, and we'll get into a slide in a moment as to why we're going to focus on that, what we wanted to do was look at the things that are available for children to do in New Orleans. Once you look at that, you have everything from the zoo to parks to aquariums and cooking classes and, there's just such a wide range. So if Katie here worked for the New York Times, and I just call you up and I say, hey, I want to family travel to you in New Orleans, you're going to go, great, what is there to do? And I'm going to go, oh, there's a zoo, and there's this, and there's this, and you're like, but where's the story in this? Where's the narrative? So I want to, as a media relations professional, take the next step and help you decide that story idea because we know, we're here, we're inside the brand, we live it, breathe it, eat it, sleep it every day. So what can we do? So when we start looking at research, every year there's a visitor profile study conducted on kind of the demographic. What does the average traveler to New Orleans look like? Amazingly, this number blew me away. I thought it would be a lot younger age bracket. 48.3% of the visitors to New Orleans are aged 50 or older. The number 1 trend right now in family travel is multi-generational travel, and it's this 50-plus demographic that's making all the decisions, 100% about where are we going, where are we staying, what are we going to do when we get there. And the best thing about people my age that have children, 50-plus demographics paying for the trip. So that's who we want to target. While it may seem like when it comes to multi-generational travel, you want to attract me because I want to go somewhere with my children, that's great. But if I'm not the one making that decision, you need to go talk to my parents because guess what? They're going to be the one paying for that trip. And that's why it's important. The preferred hotel group, which has 2 properties in town, one being the Windsor Court and the other being the Hotel Montreal. They did a study in 2011, and they found that 20.8 million multi-generational trips were taken in that year alone. Just that year. That's an incredible number. Hotel location, they also found that everybody of this 20.8 million who took trips, 92% of them based where they were going and what they were going to do on the hotel location. So what that tells us is even if you don't have destination lodging, if you don't have someplace that people are just going to come and stay at that hotel because it is a destination in and of itself, when we go to pitch family travel, the hotel has to be a central part of it. For those of you who are here from the CVB, that might be a little bit counterintuitive to what you typically would do because you would promote an event or you would promote the French Quarter or you would do something along those lines. You wouldn't start out and be like, we have a wonderful hotel. Because who travels just for a hotel? Very, very few people. But with this group, that's extremely important, and that's something that we want to focus on. This number is incredible too. 77 million people will be turning 65 and retiring between now and 2030. The other crazy statistic here, the average age of a new grandparent now is 47 years old. So the average American citizen is becoming a grandparent at 47. Fits perfectly with where this market is, fits perfectly with where it's going. And so what we're going to do is look at the number of trips they take per year. For groups that travel, grandparents, their children, and the grandchildren, they're taking on average of 4.4 trips per year. This is because the average range of a grandparent from their grandchild is now a distance of more than 200 miles. It's further, grandparents are living further away from their grandchildren than ever before. So they're traveling for these life events and these opportunities to spend time with them. The number one thing they want to do when they travel with these multi-generational family groups, they say, create memories. They are less concerned about the experience and more about opportunities for creating memories. And so when you take all this into consideration and you take into consideration what it is that New Orleans has, you can see where we're headed here towards a narrative. We're starting to distill this down a little bit. We're heading in the direction where multi-generational travel is going to be really important in the family travel market for this community. But you can't just go and say, hey Katie, I have a multi-generational family travelers from New Orleans. This is the perfect thing because we have all of these. You're still going to go, it's too broad, it's too much. But you also got to know what they're looking for. So when you start looking at what they're looking for, they're all over the place. Because guess what? This market can be further broken down into more markets. So let's look at this. Holidays are the #1 time of the year that they are going to travel together as a group. I can remember some of my best memories as a child. One year, I grew up in a very small community. My whole family moved away, moved back, except for one of my uncles. So what did we do? We all loaded up and went to Disney for Christmas, just so we could spend time with the one uncle. So here there's 40 of us to Disney World as a group. And guess what? Grandma paid, just like the statistics showed. And this was back in the late 80s. So, you're seeing that. The holiday is the time that people do it. The other thing are milestone events. So granddaughter's Sweet 16, a destination wedding, any 50th wedding anniversary, any of those things. Maybe even the parents' anniversary. The grandparents want to treat them to a nice weekend. We'll be here to help you watch the children. The caution, grandparents want to be active too. They don't want to be stuck in a hotel the entire time babysitting. So that's why some of the hotels that we're going to talk about here in a moment are really important to this. Cruise. New Orleans is a cruise port, and the visitor survey for Profile for New Orleans showed that the average cruise goer who comes into New Orleans for a cruise either stays 2.2 days before the cruise or 2.2 days after the cruise. The reason why this is important is cruises thrive. Like their #1 thing they're going after are multi-generational travelers. Why do people want to take their entire family on a cruise? They feel safe because they're in a contained environment. They feel like even if the child gets lost, they're somewhere on the boat, so we'll find them. And so there's just a lot of safety, maybe thoughts of being safe, but that's not necessarily true that they're any safer on a cruise ship than they are in New Orleans or Dallas or Atlanta or wherever they're going to go. So this is something that long term I think you really should look at. And the other market is the LGBT market. This is changing. You know, we've heard for years the LGBT market is the #1 group to go after. They take more trips per year than any other group. They spend more money. They love to shop at Riverwalk. They love to do all of these things. But as marriage equality is changing, so is the LGBT market. And so there's a couple of reasons why this needs to be important to New Orleans. First is LGBT couples are adopting at a faster rate than ever before as marriage equality becomes more and more prevalent. As they adopt, they are no longer looking for the travel opportunities of going to a nightclub, where can we go shopping? They are not even looking for LGBT specific destinations. They want to go out and do Main Street family travel opportunities. They want to go to the museums and the children's museums and the insectariums and all the things like that that they're hard to do. New Orleans is obviously an LGBT friendly destination, but as the state over the next few years and things change and marriage equality changes, this is going to be something that New Orleans definitely needs to be keeping their eye on and preparing for, because at a moment's notice, this would be a great market to jump into. So now that we know the markets, what are we going to be promoting? Well, the parents, they're looking for a few things. They want to get away from the kids. I mean, even people within our office are like, I can't wait, to go somewhere we're actually getting vacation away from the kids this weekend. That's a rare thing. Mom wants to relax, shop, hit the spa, but they also want the peace of mind of knowing the children are safe somewhere. So hotels that offer on-site certified childcare, places maybe like the zoo that have overnight programs, slumber parties where the parents feel safe dropping their children off for an overnight event while they and the grandparents go out for a night on the town. That could certainly be something. With kids, they still want it hands-on. They want them to be learning something, and of course know that they're going to be safe. Grandparents especially love for kids and to expose grandchildren to the things they did as kids. Is there a historical lesson? Is there a cooking demonstration in a, old type style kitchen like we have in the quarter where they can go do that and learn these things? Those are all important. The grandparents, I've already said, create memories. They want to spend time with their grandchildren, and they're going to pay for it. And they also like group type activities. However, at the center of it all, again, is the hotel. So we go back to that. So for the purposes of this pitch, we're going to narrow it down to multi-generational family travel at the holidays, because of Christmas New Orleans style is getting ready to kick off, and that's a huge thing. And so let's kind of look at what that's going to look like. So let's throw the Windsor Court out there. The Windsor Court is part of the preferred hotel group who has said that they will cater to multi-generational family travelers. The preferred hotel group even has their own family certification program. So you can go onto a website, you can book at a family certified hotel that's within their chain. They each have different levels of amenities they offer for different age ranges. I know the Hotel Mont Leon, they even have their mascot deliver the crib to the room and give the baby its own stuffed version of their mascot. So they're starting to do things. They also have a children's package that when you check in, you get a deck of cards, coloring book, crayons, and a disposable camera, so the kids can record their own memories while they're here on the trip with the grandparents and parents. So this is the type of thing that when we go to look at pitching multi-generational travel is very, very important and very high on the list of things that we need to consider. When we're looking at Christmas New Orleans style, the list goes on and on and on. I'm not going to read all of these. I'm going to sit here and tackle is what I'm going to do. There's just so much to do. So these are all events. The one thing that you got to be careful of when you're planning these and pitching these, you got to have something for every age group. So grandma, grandpa, mom and dad, they're all going to want to go out on that. They're going to want to listen to music. So you're going to have opportunities for that. They're going to want to do the Christmas shopping. Most of the statistics show that parents and grandchildren are willing to forego the standard gift giving if they get to go on a trip for the holidays. So, but what happens? They go shopping while they're here at the Riverwalk, and they buy small gifts and they take them home. So this is all very important. So as you can see, New Orleans for an entire month has a lot of things to do. So when we began looking at how we were going to pitch this, and we talked earlier about the top tier media, and we talked about doing targeted pitches and really zooming in on who it is that we're going to focus on, this is one of the first people we went to. And she's very, very well known for writing about multi-generational travel. She is syndicated across the country and in Canada. The other great thing about her is she has extensive reach in Florida, California, and Texas, which are 3 of the 4 main feeder markets for New Orleans travel. She's, considered an expert, as you can see where she's been on TV. The other great thing is these 3 states, she has a lot, especially California, she has a lot of papers picking up her column. So she is very interested in it, and I know we're supposed to get back on her very soon. But she also goes around the country speaking and training destinations on why this type of travel is important and why they should consider it for their pitching efforts. Peter Greenberg needs 0 introduction. He's so active on social media, it's incredible. He has an entire team. He's the CBS News travel editor. He has several of his own shows, whether it's on PBS, he has an online show. These are really incredible opportunities. The great reason why I think Peter fits perfectly for this is he understands multi-generational travel, but he's also looked at as a travel safety expert. So while he's not going to do an entire feature on New Orleans, what we would hope to do is educate him on the opportunities that are available here. And as he's talking about, doing a review of a new travel app that promotes safety and ways to be safe while you travel, he would use New Orleans as an experience of how that can be used. And so we would become a case study more or less for one of his stories. And so that is why we were very excited to have the opportunity to talk to Peter. Candace Sapin, she's incredible. She wrote a really nice article on the trend of multi-generational travel for USA Today. She also owns a company that goes around the country and builds these family travel apps. I believe Boston, DC, and Manhattan are the 3 that she has right now. She has written 2 books on family travel for National Geographic. She's just looked at as an expert. She obviously loves dogs. But it would be great because with her, we're not only hopefully getting, let's say, a story in USA Today, it's the opportunity to expose her to the size of the family travel market here, to be included in some of her future books, maybe a New Orleans family travel app, some of those things that she specializes in. So that is how we looked at creating the pitch. This is where we began pitching, and we're almost to the point that we're ready to begin the second level of pitching the story, which would be distributing that to the general media. So at this time, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer anything that you might have. And I think you have to speak into a microphone to ask the questions so that our viewers questions from anyone? Surely we're like that comprehensive. I know Katie has one, so she works for the New York Times. We've got a lot of press conferences. I should probably clarify, we do not work for the New York Times. I keep saying that. I should probably clarify that.
Okay, here's a question. How do you start a relationship with a member of the national media that you've never met, emailed, talked to before?
Well, I think there's several different ways to look at that. If you research, if you have access to any number of PR contact databases, a lot of times I would begin there because they will tell you their preferred method of contact. I'm shocked at the amount of people, especially travel journalists, that still prefer a phone call over an email. That just blows my mind that there's still a lot of those people out there. And a lot of that is because they travel so much, they get inundated with email, they would rather have a set call list when they get back to talk to you about that. So that's why it's very important to plan ahead for pitches like this. So I would first start out figuring out how I want to be contacted. When I reach out to somebody new, if I know we have a mutual acquaintance, if I know something unique about them because of the research I've done. For instance, I won't name names. There is a travel writer that we just pitched who works a lot with travel and leisure. And I know through a video that we watched him be a part of on YouTube, he collects mats as he travels the world. And so I started the whole pitch with, it's a great way for kids and families to come in. We have opportunities where they can create their own masks, they can do things. While you're here, we can do that. So I find a way to connect with them on an emotional or personal level, if at all possible. I'm relentless in learning about what their interests are, and so a lot of people think that that's bizarre and a little bit overkill, but that's that connection that you can make. Once you make that, and you follow that up with a complete and accurate pitch that is easy for them to see a narrative, they'll respond to it, because what they want to see is organization. They want you to be an expert at what it is you're trying to pitch to them, and you obviously do not want to pitch to them at a time when there's something that they're just really involved with. So if you know that there is some sort of travel crisis or airline crisis going on, and Peter Greenberg is on the news 24/7 as an expert, you don't want to pitch him that day. If you can wait till the next week. So they want to see you organized, they want to see you make an emotional connection with them on some level, or personal connection, and they want to see you position yourself as an expert that they can come back to. Any other questions? Yes.
You talk a lot about creating a narrative and the importance of that to cut down on the clutter. Can you give me an example of how you would create a narrative here? Because still I'm thinking of all the different opportunities that you have instead of writing down.
Sure. Well, what I would do here, and I didn't go into a lot of detail here because I don't want to bore people, but what I would do is I would take the Christmas New Orleans style as a whole. And so, with the different Réveillon dinners and all the things that stem from tradition, there's so much tradition and pageantry, if you will, about the holiday season in New Orleans. I would position it as almost a Creole themed Christmas, the things that you can get out and do. The other important thing too, when you're promoting, in my opinion, Christmas in New Orleans, is the fact you can still get outside and do things. The weather here is mild compared to northern climates, so it's a great place for families to be able to come here. And versus going snow skiing in New Mexico or Colorado, where you're stuck in the lodge all together, and you're up to spend 4 or 5 days together, and you're worried if you can stand your family for that long. Coming to New Orleans, there's still the ability to get out. There's a chance for the kids to get out and go to the park, go to the zoo, do outdoor activities. You can walk from different attractions. So, and that was the great thing about the hotel here. So what I would do is we've got a great family hotel, and here are all the New Orleans events that you can do. But I would definitely theme it around the cultural thread that New Orleans is already known for, versus just family travel. Any other questions? All right, well, I thank you all for attending, and those of you who are watching live via the internet for watching. And I know we'll be sending out notices soon on the next topic and the next presenter for Dev Talk. So if you have any suggestions, I encourage you to forward those to us so we can meet those needs. Thank you very much.